Okay, good morning, everyone. So this morning's session is Vidyamala and I in combination. And so I'm going to start us with a short period of meditation. The theme this morning is relating to that which is difficult, painful. And so it really is the heart of the theme of the retreat. 2 arrows. Aha, I see Vidyamala.
Yes, I've made it.
So are you okay for me to continue with leading the short sit, or would you like to do that, Vidyamala?
I would really love you to do it. Thank you.
I will do it then. Good. And we can all settle in. So one of the themes that we've been looking at, and in a way the main theme, is engaging with our experience in a direct way, our direct experience. And I won't talk about that a lot because Vimala Chitta did that yesterday really beautifully and very eloquently, I thought. So as we do the sit, this is just something to consider, to bear in mind as we, this really is just going to be 3 minutes of, feeling our feet on the floor, and that's, but, the way we're guiding this is all about feel your feet rather than thinking about your feet, or even being aware of a sort of vague idea of our feet. Yeah, simple as that. So just feeling the sensations. Okay, so that's it.
Vishvapani?
Yes.
Could we salute the shrine?
Ah, let us salute the shrine. Yes, so we'll salute the shrine. And we have been thinking we want to bring in a little bit of the ritual context. So if you have a shrine in your room, then you might want to turn to it. Alternatively, I have various tankas here. So we'll do this together, do this in unison. I'll do it slowly though, so we can join in together. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dhammaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Namah. Om Hum. So settling into a posture that will support us. Acknowledging what's happening in our experience. Just where our attention is and the natural influence, the ripples of the things we have been doing. A sense of making a transition. How does it feel to arrive here? This moment, this body, sensing contact with the floor and the chair, sensing, feeling the sensations of touch, resting, just as they are. Feeling the body rising up from our seat, the torso, whole length of the spine, the breadth of the back, the whole height of the body. The back and the front. Softening the eyes, letting the muscles around the eyes just release. And opening to the sensations of breathing. In the chest. In the belly. Along with the movement of the muscles, the subtler sense of our emotional, our inner experience, however we experience that in the body. Anything that feels tense or tight. Fluid. Just touching into that inner sense. Starting to expand our awareness through the body, through the whole body, from the head to the feet. Taking it all in. Sense of the room we're inhabiting, sounds, light in the room, and then just introducing a little movement in the fingers and toes, shoulders, and making a transition. Stretching if that's what your body needs. Okay, so how are you doing, Vidyamala?
Well, I'm here physically.
You're here, all right.
Always a good sign that I'm here physically.
Mm-hmm.
And a little bit more of me's here after that lovely little practice, so thank you for that.
Okay. So over to you.
Thank you. So good morning, everybody. I think Vishvapani's already said that this morning we're going to investigate, I guess with more precision, this whole teaching of the first and the second arrow, plural. I always think the Buddha was very optimistic when he says there's only one second arrow. I think as Sona said the other day, it can almost feel like there's a whole quiver of arrows coming into the body when we aren't able to be with our direct experience with a wise, kindly approach. So we're going to be unpacking that. So I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction, and then Vishvapani is going to lead a meditation, have a little break, and then we're going to break into small groups, and we've got a lovely exercise where you can really sort of investigate with a couple of other people what are your favorite second arrows and how might you do some skillful action to reduce the discomfort of those, maybe they become Teflon arrows rather than sticky arrows. I'm not quite sure what happens. And then Vishvapani is going to introduce another, some bit more input. So I thought I'd just say a little bit about this teaching of the two arrows, the Salatha Sutta, because this is what we're drawing on. It's this text from the Buddha, and in the chat box, when I get it together, I'll copy in the link where you can actually go to the original text if you want to. I'm going to tell you why I'm not quite together in a moment, but I'm just going to do this little bit of input first, and then I'll give an example of my own first and second arrows that have happened this morning. Good. So in the sutta, this is a paraphrasing of the actual text, and I think it's always good to hear the word of the Buddha. So when an ordinary person experiences a painful feeling, they worry, agonize, and feel distraught. Then they feel two types of pain, one primary and one secondary. It's as if this person was pierced by an arrow, and then immediately afterwards by a second arrow, and they experience the pain of two arrows. Having been touched by that painful feeling, they resist and resent it. They harbor aversion to it. And this underlying tendency of resistance and resentment towards that painful feeling comes to obsess the mind. So it's very interesting, isn't it? You got the first arrow, second arrow, the resistance and the resentment causes the second arrow. Then we get aversion, and then we get obsession, mental obsession. And this next bit's very interesting. Touched by that painful feeling, the ordinary person delights in compulsive distraction, often through pleasure seeking. Why is that? Because compulsive distraction is the only way they know to escape from painful feeling. This underlying tendency of craving for distraction comes to obsess the mind. So now you've got two obsessions, one to avoid the pain and the other to crave distraction. And then finally, being overwhelmed and dominated by pain through resistance and compulsive distraction, the ordinary person is joined with suffering and stress. Yeah, and that's what it can feel like, can't it? That we are joined with suffering and stress. When a wise person experiences a painful bodily feeling, they don't worry, agonize, and feel distraught. And they feel primary pain, but not secondary pain. It's as if this person was pierced by an arrow, but this was not followed by a second arrow. So they only experience the pain of a single arrow. They are not joined or fettered to suffering and stress. Yeah. So that's the kind of core teaching. It's such a great teaching because, of course, we can all, I'm sure none of us have literally been pierced by an arrow, but we can all imagine what that would feel like, that pain. And then we can all imagine the way it's as if we're pierced by lots of second arrows through our unwise responses to our direct experience. So what we're doing this morning definitely builds on what we did yesterday of learning, training how to come closer to the actual direct experience that we had such a really sort of quite deep introduction to yesterday morning, just really staying with unpleasant Vedana, neutral Vedana, pleasant Vedana. And in the text, it also says that the same applies for pleasure and neutrality, that with pleasure, we get joined to pleasure and we get joined to neutrality. And ignorance is said to be the root poison associated with neutral Vedana, which I think is very interesting because ignorance is based on the root word ignoring. So we are literally ignoring our experience, and that makes us ignorant. And then there's, at the end of the sutta, there's usually in the Pali Canon, you get the kind of text and you get a little poetic rendition. So the little more poetic rendition goes like this. The discerning person, learned, doesn't sense the secondary feeling of pleasure or pain. This is the difference in skillfulness between the sage and the run-of-the-mill person. I love that. In the Pali text, they often call people like us the run-of-the-mill person. For a learned person who has fathomed the Dhamma, clearly seeing this world and the next, desirable things don't charm the mind. Don't charm the mind. That's lovely, isn't it? Undesirable things bring no resistance. Their acceptance and rejection are scattered, gone to their end, do not exist. Knowing the dustless, sorrowless state, they discern rightly, have gone beyond becoming to the further shore. So their acceptance and rejection are scattered, which is essentially the pulling towards response and the pushing away response. That's the essential primary behavior that we're trying to unwind as Buddhists. The idea that we habitually just push away what we don't like and pull towards us what we do like. And that is the cause of dukkha. So we're going to have a go today at particularly working on the painful. I think this is probably the primary one for a lot of us, that we're driven by trying to avoid pain. That seems to be very, very fundamental for a lot of us. We just don't know how to be with dukkha. We don't know how to be with discomfort in a wise way. Sometimes we use language of turning towards pain. I've used that language myself quite a lot. And I've come over the years to realize that that even needs unpacking. What do we mean by turning towards pain? And I think that if I was to do this as a gesture, let's just check that I can see, that you can see what I'm doing. If it was a gesture, if you've got experience that's unpleasant and you're doing that is deeply habitual. Even before we know we're doing it, there's this pushing away. And almost to the extent that you're trying to live your life over here. So you've got the pain. You just can't quite do this. You've got the pain and then you're trying to live your life here, keeping that out. And here you are trying to have this lovely life, have a lovely life, push, 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 lovely life. And these gestures are stressful. They're quite stressful even to enact, let alone to live like this. So then we use this language of turn towards the pain, which I've come to realize some people hear as, here's the pain, that you do this and I'm going to stare out the pain. Yeah. And then that becomes overwhelming. And that's what I call the octopus. So you do this and then, oh my God, I'm just completely overwhelmed by the pain. I'm only the pain. Yeah. So you just tip from denial to overwhelm. And that is not going to be a wise response. So I think it's much more that you very gently, instead of having this gesture pushing away, you soften that pushing away. And here's the pain. And here's my life. And my whole life is all of this, plus the pain is part of my life, but it's not everything. So just to be aware if we use the language of turning towards the pain, we're not encouraging the octopus on the face. I think that's quite graphic because that's what it can feel like. Because of course, when I've got the octopus on my face, I can't see anything other than my hand, which is the pain. I don't want to live like that, but I do want to live this rich, full life where my pain is part of my experience. So I'm neither denying nor overwhelmed, but I'm living this kind of broad, open awareness that includes the pain. Okay, so if you ever feel the octopus, then let's just take the hand off, look around. Oh yes, there's other things as well, but try not to get back into pushing away. And it's active, as we've been saying a number of times, that, you know, working with dukkha, it isn't a one-off stance. It's an ongoing process, moment by moment by moment. How do we deal with what's arising? So this morning, wow, we've got a cat and a dog in the pictures. That's so wonderful. I love seeing all the pets. They're both white. We got a white dog and a white cat. How amazing. Anyway, here we are. So this morning, I've had very active dukkha practice. And yet here I am. So that's quite interesting to me that I've made it here. So last week I had a communication with someone I love very dearly, not Sona. I do love Sona very dearly, but this communication I had last week that was so traumatic was not with Sona. So I had a very traumatic communication last week with somebody that I love very dearly. And I thought I was okay, but actually there's just been this drip, drip, drip of feeling increasingly undermined. I can feel my confidence kind of dripping away day by day down the plug hole. And I can feel, I've been aware of all the mental events of, I don't know how to communicate, I don't know how to love, because this other person's very attacking and highly critical. And so I'm falling down the trap of starting to believe everything this other person's saying about me that is also deeply offensive. So, I've been having this kind of increasing horrible feeling in the pit of my stomach over the last couple of days, not sleeping so well. And that's all just arising. So that is dukkha, that's arising. And then, the practice is, what do I do with that? Do I push it away and pretend it's not happening? Well, I have to admit, I've tried that a little bit. It's pretty unsuccessful. Do I get overwhelmed by it? I've also experienced that. Not very successful. Or do I somehow bring it with me into the day that, yes, I'm up against these mental and emotional states and the physical expression of that? I've had the most enormous cry this morning that has come out of nowhere. These things can happen. And actually for me, that's probably quite good because I find it quite hard to cry. And then on top of that, so that's all happened by 9:30. And then getting myself here for 10:30 every day is a challenge because I've got a paralyzed bowel because of my spinal injury. So going to the toilet is remarkably time consuming and complex. And so, I'm on the loo at 10:25 thinking, oh my God, I've got to go and do this session. And my heart's starting to pound. I'm starting to feel stressed. I'm thinking, oh, I can't do it. It's all too much. And yet here I am. So I thought that was just an interesting example. If you look at me and think, oh, it's all right for her, she's having a nice time. I'm not having a nice time at all at the moment. I'm having a really extremely challenging time. And I'm just trying to bring all that with me into this session and neither push away nor get overwhelmed. And I think that is very much the practice of living with dukkha, or trying to work with dukkha moment by moment by moment. So I thought that might just be helpful and interesting for you to have a kind of lived experience of, I've got the first arrow is, communication difficulty. And then I've got another first arrow, which is my body. And then it's dynamic of moving in and out of denial, coming back to something more settled, moving into overwhelm, noticing that, coming back to something more settled. And I'm imagining that will be my work for the rest of the day. But I don't know that because everything's impermanent. I might feel amazing at 2:00 this afternoon, who knows? But we'll just see. So I'm going to hand over to Vishvapani now to lead us in a meditation practice.
Okay, thank you, Vidyamala. Thank you for, well, introducing the theme so clearly and reading the sutta so beautifully. It says a lot, just hearing the sutta. And thank you also for being so open and sharing your experience. And not just the fact that you're having a difficult time, which we all acknowledge, but how you work with that, how you are, in fact, how you are working with that, being with that in this moment. It was quite lovely and in a way quite a privilege to hear you talk like that. And so thank you for sharing that. We're going to do an exercise, a meditation practice really, that we do on the MBCT courses that Nagabodhi, Vimla Chitra and I all teach and most used to teaching. And I won't say too much about it in advance. And on the courses, we don't give a big introduction to this because it's helpful for it just to unfold. It's speaking to the theme that Vidyamala was talking about. And we do this on the fifth week of the course, after we've really been working a lot with experiencing things quite directly in the body. And one of the things that, as everyone here is a practitioner, a meditator, you'll be familiar with, is the way that our emotions express themselves physically in the body. Yes. So this isn't something very mysterious, although it is something you notice when you meditate, that you're feeling upset and your chest feels a certain way. You're feeling angry and your limbs feeling. I mean, in a way, if you just look around at other people's body language, especially children, actually, they are incredibly expressive. And the younger they are, the more this is the case. So a 3-year-old having a tantrum is completely physical. So it wouldn't be very well. Obviously, a 3-year-old can't express this, but it's not some subtle thing that's going on about. You have to have years of meditation practice to know what an emotion feels like in the body. We've all been doing this all of our lives. So that's what we're working on. And let's just go into it. Okay. So we'll go straight back into sitting. So just take a moment to find a way to sit that's going to support you, that's going to feel helpful and comfortable and alert. And once I see on my screen that everyone's stopped moving around, I'll get us started. So just get settled in your own way. So we did a short settling practice earlier. As I said, I think it was yesterday, one way to get into meditation practice on a retreat anyway, is just to contact the sort of muscle memory of being settled. Or if not being settled, then the settling process, how that feels in the body. So the body resting with gravity. Direct experience of sensations in the body, settling on the floor. And letting the weight be taken by the floor, by our chair or our seat, or our mat if we're lying down. Letting the weight rest down. And sensing that beneath us is the planet Earth, which can support the weight of the body. Just feeling the breath. Noticing the journey that the breath goes on. Through the nose, windpipe, chest, and then the movement of the tummy. And this is before we get to all of those diaphragms. So how the breath, the air at least, moves through the body into the lungs. And that so much of the body is engaged with this process of movement, as we explored a couple of days ago, just feeling the body's engagement. Letting the breath be gentle, flow gently. And the breath is feeding the body. I'm just staying with this for a moment. Body feeds on the breath, the way a plant feeds on sunlight. So now we're going to introduce another element, which to start with isn't just our immediate experience. It's bringing something to mind that's been happening in our life. It might be something that's present, as Vidyamala described. It might be something that's happened over the last few days, but something that's at least a little bit difficult. So this isn't the biggest trauma. It's not that. We're not doing that. just something that's been a difficulty for us. It might be physical. It could also be emotional, a difficult situation, difficult interaction. Something to do with work. So this is the unpleasant Vedana. And for a moment, we're just going to allow ourselves to engage with that. Just bring it to mind, like opening a door into a meditation room, and then just in the doorway, here's this difficulty. So letting ourselves experience what it's like to have this difficulty. Now, one of the things that is quite likely to happen is that we start thinking about it. Of course we do. But we're not going to focus on the thoughts for now. There's other ways that the difficulty impacts us. So letting the thoughts drift away. And the impact is maybe emotional. And then there's how we feel that in the body. So noticing how the body is as we keep this, as we allow this difficulty to influence us. Notice how we respond, how we're impacted, how we're affected, how the body echoes the difficulty. Where is that echo? Just listening for the echo. Does something tense up? Feel clenched? Where is it in the body? How big is it? Is it changing? How heavy is it? Maybe somewhere that we're used to feeling difficulties, maybe something fresh. So we're just staying with that in a gentle way, just allowing it to be there. And breathing in, letting the breath flow in gently. And just touching that tight area with the breath. Imagining that the breath is flowing into that area. Now we're not trying to get rid of it, just allowing it to be there. We can say to ourselves, just let me feel it. Just let me feel it. As much or as little as feels okay for us. Let me feel this. So as we breathe in, just say the word opening. Opening. Gently opening. This feeling might be quite tender. If we notice that somewhere else in the body, like the face or the shoulders, is tensed up, just softening that. Breathing in, opening. Perhaps on the out breath, softening. Opening, softening. And if at any point it feels too much, just leaning away. Feeling the feet on the floor, bottom resting on the chair. Earth supporting us. Breath feeding us. Just allowing this difficulty to be present. That's all. Don't have to fix it. Don't have to solve all our problems. Just allowing it to be present. Now, just broadening our awareness to include the whole body. Again, feeling the feet on the floor, the bottom on the chair, the body rising up. Taking a deeper breath. Not focused on the difficulty anymore. Breadth of our experience. Then we're going to start making a transition. Just take this gently. It's moving towards the end of the practice. If you've gone quite deep, it might be a long way back up again. So taking your time, when you're ready, just starting to gently encourage a little movement in the body, in the fingers and toes. Aware of the room, aware of any sounds, the air in the room, the scents, light. Opening our eyes when we're ready. So making a gentle transition. Okay. So those of you who wish to, I invite you to, if you feel able, just make make a comment in the chat. Just might be a word, might be a phrase, just to evoke something of what you experienced. Now, if you'd like to, maybe no one wants to. Shallow breath. Network of fibers through my body, like on an orange pith. Knotted stomach. Is in the moment again. Can't quite read that. Release pain. Racing heart. Racing heart. Olivia, good to hear I'm not the only one having disagreements with people. Shoulders more relaxed. Hello, Olivia. Feeling of darkness, restless tingling in my chest. Churning, gut, Jaya Shraddha. Tendency to either proliferate or drift away into distraction. Not easy just staying with the basic experience. Okay. Softening went very deep. Facial muscles tightened up. Okay. Something behind the pain I don't want to be with. Tightness, struggle, working out in my mind, shortening, warmth. Okay, I'm going to just move my attention away from the chat now. So thank you all for sharing that. On mindfulness courses, on MBCT courses, when we do this, we allow quite a lot of space for inquiry afterwards. It can go quite deep and it can be quite strong. And it's not really possible for us to do this, to do an inquiry now. So I just want to acknowledge that doing that practice may have left you with something that feels difficult. We're going to, in fact, what we're going to do is to have a break. And I think mainly I just encourage you in that break to be with your experience just in way that you need, okay? But it may be that actually moving away from the difficulty will work as well. And really what we're doing, although I acknowledge that that may have been quite confronting, it's simply noticing something that's already there, already affecting us, and bringing our attention to it. And bringing attention to it in a light and gentle way. So on mindfulness courses, this is often a point where something clicks with people, which, I'm sure that mindfulness teachers have been saying for the previous 4 weeks, but it clicks with them that it's not a relaxation practice. Yeah, we're not trying to get rid of all of our difficult experiences in order to feel better. And that is actually whether it's a mindfulness course or in fact, why people go along to a Triratna Buddhist center, that's often the agenda in people's minds. I want a bit of peace, and peace, that means getting away from my difficulties. I'd like to feel more relaxed, so I don't want to think about all that stuff. And that's not what mindfulness is. Mindfulness is being aware of our experience, and that our experience, as we saw yesterday, there's this range of Vedana, and that's part of the human condition. If you think about the 5 skandhas, which is one of the places in the Buddhist teachings where we have the idea of Vedana, those are the constituents of consciousness. So the experience of unpleasant Vedana, unpleasant experiences, pain, suffering, that is inherent in having consciousness. That needs a bit of unpacking from a Buddhist point of view, but just leave it. Just take it that we all do experience pain. So, what we're really exploring is how to be with that. I think I'm going to stop now. It's 20 past. So if we take a 20-minute break now, rather than me talking more, then we'll come back at 22, and that'll give us enough time to do more around this. If anyone feels, I think I need to say this actually, if anyone really feels they've been left with something very difficult, message me privately in the chat and we'll maybe have a talk over the break. Yeah. Okay.
Could I just quickly say something as
Yes.
well? When we come back from the break, if you could gather a pile of cushions or pillows from your house and have them beside you, maybe 6, something like that, 6, 7 cushions.
If people don't have 6 or 7 cushions, could they use books maybe or something like that?
Or things like cardigans and raincoats.
Yeah. Okay.
Just a pile of 6 or 7 objects, not too heavy, to do something with, and that shall
Stackable
remain
objects.
a mystery until we get back.
Yeah.
Okay,
Good.
lovely.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Sona.
I think he's just trying to get himself set up. Oh my God. Put the camera on you. See the state of yourself. That's always a bit of a shock. So Sona, I think that's going to work fine. You're set up. Except all we can see is your shirt currently.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I hear you perfectly. Have you got that external mic on?
Yeah,
Good. Sounds really clear.
good. I can't see myself very well, but can you see everything?
Yeah. Oops. Oh, where have you gone?
Oh, look, I can see myself now.
Hi, Soda.
Hello, who's that?
Ollie.
Oh, hello, Ollie.
Hi.
I've lost so. Oh, there you are, at top left. Good. Adhisthana tech person, that's Lizzie, isn't it? Are you there, Lizzie?
Yes, hello.
Hello, Lizzie. I sent a message to the WhatsApp group, the tech
Yeah.
WhatsApp group. Did you get that?
Yeah, I've got it all sorted out. You'll get an invite, but if you just decline, and then
Okay.
everybody else will go.
Brilliant.
through.
Okay, thank you so much. So that's giving the rest of you an idea of just how together the Adhisthana tech people are. We've got a little WhatsApp group, and I just ask for something and it happens just like that. Amazing. So thank you, Adhisthana tech people. They've got a little team of people, different people doing it in different sessions, and they're all amazing, of course. So here we are, 11:40. So we will begin now. Right, where's Sona? There he is. So I'm just going to say a little bit, and then if you can move the spotlight to Sona, Lizzie, and then he's going to demonstrate something, and then we're going to break out into small groups. Okay, so we're going to do an enactment of how our primary and secondary suffering manifests in our lives. And this is called the cushion exercise. So Sona is going to demonstrate for us an example of a primary experience, something that's a given, something that's come along in his life that is in the present. And then the kind of ways he adds to that suffering through secondary experience, through when he's not able to just be with the basic experience, the kind of things that he does that intensifies his suffering. Sorry, can people hear me? I've got my mic out of the way again. Can people hear me okay? Okay, good. I keep forgetting to move my mic to the right place. Okay, so if we over to Sona, if we spotlight
Okay.
Sona, good.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I hear you beautifully.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about a real condition that I suffer from. And I had an episode of it yesterday, and it's a migraine. So this fluffy cushion represents all my neuro pathways that are firing off or doing something really horrible in my head. That stiffens my shoulders and neck and my stomach, and I feel slightly like I'm going to be sick and got pain, terrible pain in my head. But at the moment, this primary condition, so this is, I haven't got it at the moment actually, but so I'm going to imagine it now. So I'm imagining I woke up and I got this headache that's starting. Oh dear, here comes another migraine. I keep getting these migraines, and it's going to be really difficult getting through the day if it gets any worse. So what am I going to do? I've got to do a group this afternoon. I'm feeling quite anxious already. I feel quite stressed actually. I think it's the cause of the migraine. Oh, my head's really hurting. I can feel my body kind of getting tense. I can actually feel more tension in my body, like it's cramping up a bit. I'm sure that's going to make the headache worse. Oh, just going to relax with these, and am I going to get through the day? I mean, am I going to get through the week? I suppose I get a headache tomorrow as well. More worry. And it's going to be a horrible day tomorrow because when I get these migraines, I don't know whether I can stand or sit or lie down. Lying down's worse. I probably won't sleep very well tonight. So, going to have sleepless night. And the migraine's still there, but it's really horrible. It's just seems to be getting worse. And I think I'm just getting a bit worried about what the neurologist said about. I had to have an MRI scan for my hearing when I lost it. They found something weird on my brain, and maybe I've got a tumour. Oh no, I'm going to have to go to hospital and have more blooming tests. And I'm sure they want to do some horrible thing to my brain then. So that's and then And what's going to happen to poor Vidyamala? I'm supposed to be caring for her. I'm going to get all these migraines every day. I don't think it'd be worth living with. She would be really upset. She won't love me anymore. I'll just find someone else to. God, I just feel a bit overwhelmed. I've got all these things. Come on, Sona, pull yourself together. Now, what is it that you've got at this very moment? I've got a migraine. Okay, well, you don't need to have the other ones for the moment. Oh, wow, what a relief. God, my head hurts still, but I feel a bit more expansive. I feel a bit better. Yeah, but you won't do all day this evening. No, but at this moment, I'm not going to worry about this afternoon. I'm just going to be with this experience now. And that is cushion exercise. Over to you, Vidyamala.
Brilliant. Well, not brilliant, of course, because one wishes you didn't have the migraine or the secondary cushions, second arrows, but that was a very accurate, and I'm sure we could all identify with what you were describing there and acting out. And it was a human experience, wasn't it? There was a difficulty, and then there was all the kind of worries and anxieties and fears and worrying about the future and so on. And then at the end, he came to, oh, actually, all I've got is the sensations of a migraine. I don't need to be carrying around this whole load of secondary cushions. And he very gently let them go. He didn't push them off. It wasn't aversion. It was more just, I don't need to be adding all these things. And then he just had the primary experience. Yeah. So what we want you to do is to break into groups of 3. And you'll have 5 minutes each to act out what goes on for you. So you could choose an experience that you might have now, or something that is in your life that keeps recurring as your basic experience. And then all the ways you add to that. What are your favorite ways of adding to that? And we're doing this for a couple of reasons. One is just to get greater self-knowledge through doing this with a couple of other people. You got a couple of witnesses, but also it can be really quite amazing. You got this big load, and then you let it go, and really feel what it feels like when you let go of that secondary pile of cushions, and the sense of, oh gosh, there's more space, there's more perspective, and the burden is greatly diminished. And I think in Buddhism, the Buddha did use the language of the burden of suffering, which is quite interesting. And some suffering is unavoidable in human life, as we're saying. The basic experience, we've all got bodies and senses, and this unpleasant Vedana is inevitable. But the burden, the great mass of suffering that we so quickly experience through not being able to be with the basic experience with a patient, kindly awareness, that's what we carry through life. But learning how to, here it is, I can let it go. And then, as Sona demonstrated, very quickly, the cushions start piling up again. So the practice is to keep on noticing the piling up of the secondary cushions and keep on letting go. But for the point of the exercise, I suggest you simply name, hopefully you've all got the cushions beside you, so you can name what it is to your other 2 people can witness and hear, and then just notice what it feels like to let them go. And then another thing that I think is important, I've got a cushion here with me. Just imagine I've got a cushion on my lap here. I've got a microphone in the way now. When you've let go of all the secondary cushions, then experience just stroking the primary, because we're accepting it with love, the primary suffering. It's not a kind of, oh God, well, I'll just put up with it then. But it's like, oh, okay, here you are, this is hurting. How can I be with this with care and love? Yeah. Sona was lucky because he had a really nice fluffy cushion. So if you've got any nice strokeable cushions, put that down as your first cushion. Then you can have the experience of loving that. Okay, what's the time? 10:02. How long do you think you need, Vishvapani, for your
20 minutes.
20 minutes, okay. Okay, so if you in your groups, you work out the timings amongst you, have 5 minutes each. So that'll be 15 minutes. And then Lizzie, if you can end the breakout rooms after 15 minutes. Yeah. So I'll just leave it up to each of you to work out. Please do work out the timing, so the timing's fair. You get 5 minutes each. I'll tell you what, why don't you do 4 minutes each, and then there's a little bit of time for overrun and discussion. So 4 minutes each. So if one of you could take on timing when you get into your rooms. Okay, good luck. Bonne chance. So Vajrasara, Kerry, oh good, you're going off and you've got your rooms. Kerry and Jody. You got rooms to go to?
There's 2 groups that are going to be groups of 4, by the way. Vidyamala, I've let them know in the chat.
Okay, that's fine.
Privately.
They can work it out. Yeah. Just wondering whether they should be 2 groups of 2, whether you should divide them into 2 groups of 2. Oh, they can figure it out. They're grown-ups. Yeah. Jody might not be there, I guess, because it is the middle.
Yeah, so Jody, yeah.
So will it be 3 and
There's only one group of 4 then. That's
okay,
and
good.
I've let them know in advance. So
Okay, great.
So.
Okay, and then you'll end the breakout rooms at the right time, and I'm going to go off and have a little rest. Okay.
Okay, great. All right.
Perfect. Thanks, Lizzie. Thanks for everything.
All right. All right. Bye-bye.
So Lizzie, when you post these sessions, obviously you can just cut out this pause for the breakout rooms.
Yeah, and also the break before as well. We'll make sure to cut that out too.
Yeah, good, good.
Tea break.
I hope people, are the team sending you how to break the sessions up? Because I think we were supposed to, but I haven't at all. Hope somebody else has. But I guess if you're there, you probably know, don't you?
For this breakout room.
No, generally we were asked at the
This
beginning
breakout
of the
room
retreat.
is just random.
Yeah, I think we were asked at the beginning of the retreat if we could send an email straight after each session about how we'd like the videos broken up. But I haven't done it once. I don't know.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, if you send it in, Caroline tends to do the editing and things. So yeah.
Yeah, but like I say, I haven't done it once, so at least you can work it out. I suppose today I could. Let me just make a note of it.
Yeah. It's all right. Okay, so the notification's gone out for the last 60 seconds.
Okay,
so people will be
lovely.
in.
Excellent, thanks. Oh, here they come. I love this bit where everyone sort of comes pouring back. Welcome back, everybody. Just wait for the others to come back, make their way back from cyberspace. Excellent. So I think that's everybody back. I'm not going to do any more discussion around that now, but I suggest that you could take any questions or insights into the groups this afternoon. Anything you want to share about that? And let's have a little micro break for about 4 minutes and then come back at 10 past for Vishvapani's session. Yeah, so he will start at 12:10.
Yeah, I'm on my computer, but I'm not actually at work until next week. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you.
Vishvapani,
Yes.
are you going to send an email to Caroline about how to break up the session afterwards?
Okay.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah. In the Salata Sutta, Vidyamala,
Yeah.
what was the quote about becoming the inclination of your mind?
Oh, I think that's from the Two Kinds of Thinking Sutta.
Yeah, I know that's the Vidyamala Sutta, but the so there was something similar in the Salata Sutta.
Okay, I've got it here. Let me have a quick look.
Become joined to our suffering. That was good. Don't worry if you don't have it to hand.
Sorry, I'm just.
Becomes ingrained or something like that.
It comes to obsess the mind.
Obsess the mind. Yeah.
Yeah, this underlying tendency comes to obsess the mind.
Okay, good.
And then being overwhelmed and dominated by pain, the ordinary person is joined with suffering and stress. And they also uses language of fetid.
Yes, Vajrasara is asking for a translation.
Okay, good. So that was, yeah, what I'll do is I'll turn that in. It is slightly Vidyamalaized, but never mind.
Yeah, that's all right.
Buddha will be forgiving.
The primary and secondary bit, I don't remember that in the...
no, exactly.
What Pali for primary is.
Exactly.
What's Pali for primary?
Yeah, no, they talk about physical and mental, but I just thought, like at this retreat, we'd call it primary and secondary.
Yeah. No, it was very good. I seem to remember that you and I started to Vidyamalize it.
Well, that's where I got this from, actually. I went back to my first book.
Yeah.
Which is where we'd done that work.
Well, in that case, it's partly Vishvapani.
Exactly. We are both equally responsible for distorting the word of the Buddha.
Yes, I want all the credit. I went on to do much more of that in my own book about the Buddha.
I think it's an important thing, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Right then. Oh no, not quite 12 minutes past. Another minute or so. Yeah, so it would be, I think people might want this diagram once I've done it.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll turn this into a Word document and we can send it around to people.
Yeah.
You listen to that, Vajrasara, that's what we shall do.
Okay, I'm going to get started. Although I do see some people still coming back. So I'm going to get going because I'd like to do a little presentation, and this, generally speaking, with mindfulness-based teaching, it's all very experiential, but a little bit of theory, a little bit of something more conceptual can help. And I use this, I've sort of developed this material myself, so the other mindfulness teachers might not be familiar with it. But I think it'll knit together some of the things we've been talking about, particularly in this session. And, you know, Vidyamala, her approach, you know, the exercises that Vidyamala led, that's the breathworks material. And the exercise that I led, the sitting with difficulty practice, that's from a slightly different approach. So, but, you know, it's been interesting talking with Vidyamala about how different perspectives fit together. That's one of the things that I'm really enjoying about the retreat, working with colleagues, you know, working with other order members. So what I call this a stress cycle, and it is drawn from other, it's used, or versions of it are used by psychologists, essentially. So we've been exploring suffering or difficulty today, and I'm going to use this flip chart, which I hope you'll be able to read. So suffering or difficulty. And as Vidyamala said at the beginning, it can seem a bit dour to focus so much on suffering, but that is a criticism that people have always made of Buddhism. And Buddhism, says in the Four Noble Truths, suffering, dukkha, should be our central concern. As human beings, it's just a core truth of our life, and how we respond to that is a central issue for all of us in our lives. And what I'm going to present is how some of these ideas like primary and suffering relate to each other, and the dynamics through which we create this secondary suffering. So let's just start with the primary suffering. And we can think of it as, in terms of the basic analysis that we tend to use. It comes from Satipatthanas originally, but it's also the same, more or less the same analysis that they use in CBT, for example. So the body, we can have suffering that's in the body, suffering or difficulties.
Funny, we can't actually read that. So if you just just tell us what you're writing down. Is fine.
All right. Okay. So then there's thoughts.
Oh, so what was underneath thoughts?
That's physical.
Physical,
and then
okay.
Feelings, right?
So it's physical, thoughts, and what was the last one?
Feelings. So,
okay.
All sorts of difficulties, and we can consider any of these to be primary. So a difficult physical experience might be something that's physically painful, physical pain. Let's see if I can get a bit closer to the screen. I don't think it's going to work, is it? Oh, I'll forget it.
No, other people are saying they can read it, so it's maybe just
all
me.
right. Okay, we'll see what we can do. The main thing is the shape that I'm going to come to. So, difficult physical. Put yourself on speaker view. Then you may.
Yes, that was my fundamental error.
Right. Okay.
So it's all fine.
Not like me.
Exactly.
So I'm going to keep going because there's a few bits to put together with this. So what are difficult thoughts as a primary part of our experience? So that's quite important psychologically, to notice that a thought might come into my mind, such as, I'm no good. My life's no good. I've failed in my life. I've messed it all up. Now, there will be all sorts of things behind that. So you could say, well, it's not primary. But in the moment, it comes in, it arises as a very strong thought. And so one of the ways that we work is in relation to depression. And that thought, there's something wrong with me, essentially. That thought is very powerful. It just arises. Okay, you could try and figure out where it comes from, but in the moment, it's just that. Or difficult feelings, difficult emotions. And it might be a low mood, for example. Our moods go up, they go down. So, we find ourselves with difficulties. And actually, there are, I'm just going to say, situations. And that's all the stuff that maybe we've been talking about. You might have thought of a difficult situation with when we did the sitting with difficulty practice, or with the cushion exercise. So that's a kind of catch-all. It's just saying, look, there's lots of difficulty in life. And everyone, all of us, I think, can agree, I'm going to assume that we're all agreeing, that there's some kind of connection between the difficulties that we have and the stress that we experience. Stress is maybe another word for secondary suffering, but there's some kind of relationship to that. Why do I get stressed? Well, it's something to do with difficulties, but it's not just that. So these are difficulties. But there's something in how I relate to these difficulties that's really important. And this is tendency to avoid. So now Vidyamala spoke about this earlier on, the wanting to not look at our experiences, just wanting to, the thought, I don't want this to be happening. That's a fundamental thought, and it may take all sorts of different forms. I do not want this, aversion. Actually, craving, aversion, and ignorance are all bound up with that. It's interesting, I hadn't heard that before, Vidyamala's point about ignorance being the kind of core of this avoidance response. I sort of thought that was aversion, but in a way, ignorance is the root of it all. We just don't want to see the truth. So what do we do? Now, this is where we get into the stress cycle. So there's, the word I'm writing is strategy. I'm never quite sure what word to use. I sometimes say coping mechanism, but essentially, all of us have our own ways of trying to manage the fact that we have difficulties and we don't want them to be there. So I'm going to give a couple of fairly crude examples, and then I'm going to relate them to maybe slightly more subtle things. Now, just think about an argument, okay? So I don't know about you, but I personally do sometimes get into arguments, and sometimes with people who are quite close to me. So a domestic is what we call it in London. So when that happens, what happens is this actually happens the other way around as well. It's basically the other person says something that is not okay, right? I'm not having it. You're not talking to me like that. You're not treating me like that. No. That no is avoiding, right? No. So my strategy, and strategy is a rather intellectual word for what I actually do, is I tell them, no, you don't talk to me like that, right? So that's my way of dealing with the situation. Now, the next bit is important to notice, that there is actually a benefit. There's a benefit in doing that. Can you see that? Yeah. And the benefit is, I've said my bit, I've got it off my chest, I feel a bit better. And then what's the cost? Vidyamala, what's the cost?
Well, if it's an argument, you're out of harmony with somebody.
Yeah, well, it's even more immediate than that. I tell them, and what happens next?
They're going to tell you.
Yeah, exactly. So now I've got two problems. This is the kind of crude thing, right? I've got two problems. First of all, they said that thing. And secondly, they're now yelling at me. So how bad is that? Can I accept that? No, it's completely unacceptable. So what am I going to do? I'm going to avoid it. How am I going to avoid it? I'm going to use my strategy. What's my strategy? I'm going to yell at them. Does that feel good? Yes, it does. But what happens? They yell back. So we go round the cycle, and it actually and you feel this if you get into a row, an argument with someone. You feel how it all kind of ramifies really fast. Yeah. So that's one crudish example. Another one I'll use is about addiction, and perhaps we can bear in mind that this is actually used in working with addiction, but in a sense we're all addicts to our greed, our hatred, our delusion. So often with people who become addicted to alcohol or drugs or something like that, there's an underlying emotional problem. Yeah, I mean, this is fairly common knowledge. And there's, rather than engaging with what's actually going on emotionally, and it may be very difficult, people in this kind of world have often huge difficulties. It's too difficult to cope with. So the strategy is the addictive behavior, drinking, taking drugs. And it's really important to recognize, if you ever work with people like that, that they're getting a lot from their habit. Yeah, it might be, you know, we can relate to food in this sort of way. We get something from it, you know, we feel better. And then there's a cost. If it's alcohol, the cost in the end might be alcoholism, or certainly, you know, all of the things. I won't spell it out. And then now we've got those problems in our life, as well as the original problems. And so we still don't have the capacity to face them. We're still going to revert to the underlying strategy, and therefore we go round. But what's more, it becomes, it's reinforced. So yes, I was just asking Vidyamala about the quote from the Salata Sutta. It becomes ingrained, yeah? Because it's so what this is showing, all of this here is the primary suffering, and this here is secondary suffering. And the point about our secondary suffering is it's not just a single experience. In a way, it's a dynamic. There's a process at work.
Just turn your camera slightly because we can't see the primary and secondary, but just.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I just put P.
Brilliant, lovely. Okay,
right?
thank you.
So
yeah.
the difficulty, the first difficulty, even if it's a thought or a feeling, not just physical things, it's all primary. But then there's what we add to it. These are the extra cushions, and there's a dynamic. So this is quite important when we come to things like stress, anxiety, and depression, which is what some of us are used to, the mindfulness teachers here are used to working with on mindfulness courses. People come because this is their issue. So there's a difficulty, and it might be in the realm of difficult thoughts. It might be in the realm of difficult feelings. It might be to do with all sorts of things. And the tendency is to avoid it. Now, the strategy, to use that term, that in the MBCT course that some of us do, the underpinning theory from the psychologists is rumination. What the mind does when in relation to those difficult feelings is we ruminate. If I have a sense that there's something wrong with me, or I feel I've gone back into depression, I turn it over and over in my mind. The word is rumination. I keep thinking, well, why? And I think that the answer to that is the feeling of being drawn to that way of thinking. Yeah. So it feels, I mean, I don't know if any of you have ever, probably in some ways we've all been in really difficult states where you get a bit obsessed. I can think of, you know, sort of romantic things that have gone wrong and in the past, and kind of a bit obsessed about why is this happening? And it feels really important to keep thinking about it. That is the benefit. You know, something with anxiety, by continuing to reflect on the how to put it, continue to worry about it, I'm keeping myself safe. It feels important to keep thinking about what might go wrong in order to keep myself safe, and that is the benefit. The cost with these psychological processes is that by continuing to reflect in this way, they become reinforced. So if my question is, what's wrong with me and my life? And I'm just going over and over and over that question and coming up with all sorts of possible answers to it, then I come to believe it more fully. It becomes ingrained. I become joined to it, as the Salata Sutta says. And so this is very painful. I want to avoid it, but my strategy remains the same. And so I go right. And this is why these states become a trap, because they're self-reinforcing. This is why from a cognitive point of view, people get really stuck. Now, this is quite a simple way of talking about a whole realm of psychology, but this is quite a powerful way. Just to relate it to the pain, and Vidyamala's, this is slightly experimental, talking about boom and bust. It's one of the things I remember from my breathworks training. So we want to avoid the difficult, the painful experience. So I just ignore it. I override it. And that's my strategy. And that feels good because I can carry on my life and do all the things I want to do. But the cost is eventually it catches up with me. I go from boom to bust, and then I'm really fed up. And I can't wait to get back to a position where I can actually get on with my life again, and so on. And so this is one of the things in my breathworks training I learned from Vidyamala and the others. So all of this we could call the reactive cycle. So this is an avoidance Bhante talks about the mind reactive. This is a dynamic version of how the reactive mind works. I'm running out of time, but I'm going to add a sense that there's an alternative. So thinking about this from the perspective of mindfulness, the alternative is approaching. So approaching and avoiding. And this is what we've been exploring today. Okay? So in the sitting with difficulty practice, we were exploring what it's like to just be with that difficult feeling, just in the moment. And with that practice, we focus on how it manifests in the body, because that helps to, it's a way to be with our difficulty that doesn't involve lots of thinking. Because once we start thinking, our thoughts tend to have a life of their own. It's not that there's nothing wrong with thinking, but it's not that there's something wrong with thinking, but it's really helpful to be able to relate to our experiences in as direct a way as possible. So that's a bit more straightforward if it's physical, to know what the primary thing is. So with the sitting with difficulty practice, we take a physical expression. But in any case, however it is, and it might be another person who we're avoiding. So with awareness, we turn it around, and now what we're doing is approaching our experience. So I haven't worked out the other cycle quite as much, but essentially I think approaching brings awareness. Awareness brings understanding. Understanding or wisdom at its fullness, if we turn towards our experience and we really reflect on it and become aware of it, that's how wisdom arises. And understanding then is the basis for a response. And then, back here, I've run out of space. So if this is the reactive cycle, this is the response cycle. Yeah. Or if this is mind reactive, this is mind creative. Okay. If this is the Nidana chain, this is a shorthand for the spiral path. Okay, so looked at from this point of view, the whole question of how we relate to the things in our lives that we find difficult is the basis for understanding, the wheel and the spiral. So this, what you could say, is unskillful, and this you could say is skillful. But actually, that needs a bit more unpacking than I've got time to do now. In fact, I've gone over time. So I wanted to present that, even though it meant rattling through it a bit, because at least conceptually, it ties the things we've been doing together. And what's really powerful, I use this in my teaching, and people often, actually quite often say, wow, you've just described my life. You've just described my mind. I am going around a hamster wheel, and of course we all are. So I've used quite big examples of, from the fight to addiction to psychological problems. But in a way, we go around this stuff all the time. This is, these reactive moments. Okay. And I call this a stress cycle. So that's it. Good. We've gone over a few minutes. So I think there's a few things in the chat. Are they relevant?
I was thinking, Vishvapani, it's the stress cycle, but you could also say it's the freedom spiral.
It's the freedom spiral. Yeah, I mean, I usually don't include this.
That's good though. Yeah.
Because so it's usually just this on a course, because that's really what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
I mean, this is quite important, but in a way, it's a bit beyond the scope of an 8-week course. Mm. I also have used it with organizations, organizational dynamics, and this is a learning organization, and this is a dysfunctional organization. Unfortunately, too many organizations are, to some extent, down there.
So thank you very much.
Okay.
Good. So we'll leave it there, everybody. And we've got movement at 3:30 that Vidyamala is going to lead today, and then into our groups. And we've got a lot of material to take to our groups today. So have a lovely break and make wise choices, approaching rather than avoiding the next couple of hours, our direct experience, and see you later. Thanks to the tech team, as always.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was lovely, jubbly.
Thank you. Well done.
May your day go well, Vidyamala.
Thank you, Vidyamala, and thank you, Vishvapani. This was really insightful. Appreciated.
Right. Good to see you, Josh.
Good. So well done, Vishvapani. That was really good. I think it fitted in very well. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I knew it would conceptually